All right, welcome back to another video, guys. If you're new here, my name is Noah Clark, and this is something that I'm very passionate about. Today, we're going to be talking all about why Christian men need to be taking their physical health and fitness serious and what that looks like, a little bit behind my passion behind it, and why I do what I do. And so that's really what we're going to be hopping into today. My passion is really to help men get stronger and grow spiritually, physically, and mentally. That's kind of the umbrella above everything. And within all that, there is a lot, but really just growing to be the man that God has called you to be is what it's all about. And so, like I said, that is what we're hopping into today. And I'll go through a little bit of how I got to this point, and then especially why it's important and why I think Christian men need to be thinking about this and not just sitting on the sidelines, ignoring the body that God has given them. So, first, I want to start just by how I kind of got pulled into this, how God really pulled me into what I'm doing right now. And for those of you guys that don't know, I do fitness and nutrition coaching through a biblical lens. And so everything that I do, filtering it through a lens of Christ. What does it look like to steward the body that God has given us and to go about it in a way that is biblical for men? So, really, how all this started was I noticed a need within the church. And like I said, specifically men, that's where my passion is. But noticing that they're not able to be their best for God, for their family, for the ones that they love and that they want to serve because of their physical state. You know, you think about if there's a dad that, he was once the loving, energetic husband that he once was. Now, over the years, he's had a couple kids, he's in a fast growing business, and because of all the busyness of life, he hasn't prioritized his physical health. And as a result of that, he has gained 20, 30, 50 pounds. And now this man is pre-diabetic. And he's got chronic knee pain, chronic back pain. That hiking trip that his wife wants to go on, he's not sure that he can go on, and he can't go out in the yard and play with his kids or wrestle on the ground with his kids without maybe getting hurt, or definitely without being completely out of breath and exhausted. And when he gets home from work, he just wants to sit on the couch and watch TV or whatever it may be. And so that's really where this has all started and come from, is this. I've seen this way too often in families, in the church, of these men not being the men that they can be and doing what God has called them to do to their fullest potential because of where they're at physically and their neglect that they've had on their physical body. And so by stewarding the body that God has given them, by taking care of that body, they can then do all that God has called them to do to their fullest potential and be ultimately the man that God has called them to be. So that is really what it's all about with everything that I do, and my coaching and all of that is to help men live out and be the man that God has called them to be. And if you think about it, it's impossible to reach your fullest potential and be that man if you're not taking care of your physical body, right? Like, as a man and just a person in general, a human, it's impossible really to do a whole lot without our physical body. Most of what we do is physical. And yes, this relates to the spiritual. They're not separate. Think about serving, think about all the things that you do on a day-to-day basis. You need your physical body. And so there's that responsibility that God has given us to take care of that body. And if you are in ministry, or even if um, have a regular job and want to minister to others and do minister to others, if you're ignoring your physical state, what does that say about your walk as a believer and as you follow Christ? What does that say about how much you value that? Sexual sin is physical, and so what if you're talking to someone about sexual sin and you're trying to disciple them through this, and they can look at you and say, well, you're not taking care of your body, and so it's this example, and I don't mean that to be harsh at all, but I think it is the reality that we have to think about of when we are ministering to others and they may not be believers, what are they going to be saying in their head and thinking about us as the ones who are discipling them or giving them biblical advice? And so I think first we need to take that advice upon ourselves and say, okay, if we're talking to someone about these subjects, about these physical matters, then we have to look back in the mirror, and it may not be the same physical matters that this other person is struggling with, but it's still a physical matter that we have to think about as a follower of Christ. Is, okay, this person may be struggling with a sin that maybe you don't struggle with, maybe you do, but what does that say about how I treat my own physical body? And then from there, Jesus, we can look at Jesus's life. Jesus walked on this earth with a physical body. I think that is something we often overlook massively. Of, you know, this idea oftentimes that Christians as a whole can separate the spiritual and the physical. But if we look in the Bible and dig deeper, there are so many things within the Bible that are very physical. Jesus walking on this earth was physical. Jesus came in the flesh as a physical man. And then when he was resurrected, he had his physical body. It was not a different body, it was the same physical body. And then when we think about our resurrection one day, that is going to be in our physical body. And so just because we think, well, it doesn't really matter, the spiritual side is the only thing that matters. Okay, sure, if you ignore your body, sure, you can still get to heaven, but one day these bodies that we have are going to be resurrected. And that's a whole nother subject. But, I think at the root of this, just giving you some thoughts and ideas to think about here in terms of what it means to really steward and take care of the body that God has given you, planting some seeds for you. I think about 1 Corinthians 6:19 and 20, and we can actually pull that up here real quick. I want to flip pages over to that real quick and actually read that to you guys, because I think it's a super good verse and scripture that we can take into account when we're talking about this subject. We've got too many things going on here, but all right, 1 Corinthians 6:19 and 20. Here we go. Yeah, so starting at verse 19, do you not know that your bodies are temples of the Holy Spirit who is in you, whom you have received from God? You are not your own. You were bought with a price. Therefore, honor God with your bodies. And you guys may have heard those two verses before, but I want to try to give you a layer deeper on this. And I just learned more about this recently from my friend and a good pastor, Chase Rapogel, and he talks about this idea, diving into this idea that our body is a temple. And so what there's a lot of significance to that. It's not just this modern temple that, sure, it's holy, but it doesn't really mean that much. No, it goes much deeper than that. If we look back at who Paul was talking to here in 1 Corinthians, these people that he was talking to would know about the Old Testament temples, and these temples that were very holy and very prestigious. Like, I can't give it the right words here, but it has such a meaning to it. And only the highest priest could go past the curtain once a year because of how holy and sacred these temples were in the Old Testament. And so when Paul says this is a very profound thing, a very significant thing that Paul is saying here. This is not just some random thing that he's bringing up. This is very significant when Paul says that your bodies are temples of the Holy Spirit. Just that alone should give us a respect for our bodies and a significance in the way that we think about them. And so, kind of again, going back to the next point here, going again, kind of back to how I was talking about of maybe you're discipling someone. If we're preaching self control, but we're not honoring and having self control and discipline within our own bodies, how does that look in terms of what we're saying to other people? And then the last point I'll mention within all this is when we think about the first sin back in Genesis was a physical sin, right? It was somebody ate food, right? Adam and Eve in the garden. It was a physical sin. And so I think it'd be silly to think that the Bible doesn't bring physical significance. Our bodies are very significant in their physical form. And so within all that conversation, okay, yes, our bodies are important, but I think oftentimes as Christian men, we can either totally ignore our bodies, which is kind of what I've been speaking towards the past few minutes here, or we can idolize our bodies. And neither one of these things, ignoring or idolizing, are biblical, right? Like neither one is biblical. And I think a lot of times too, when Christian men come to the fact of, okay, I need to take care of my body, they go about it just how every other person would. They go about it in a secular way or a worldly way. And I think there needs to be a way that aligns with our faith and aligns with our beliefs in taking care of my body. And so again, this kind of goes back to my whole goal within all of this is there needs to be a way, if our beliefs truly affect every area of our life and we are to let the love of Christ flow through us in everything that we do, then our health and fitness needs to be the same. We should go about our health and fitness in a biblical way. It shouldn't be going to the gym and having the same thoughts as the culture and the worldly way with the gym and working out and all those things. A lot of the culture and men these days, they go into the gym primarily just for the looks, to get the hot chicks, whatever it is. And as a man who follows Christ, that is not our primary reason for going to the gym. And no, I'm not saying here that looking better is a sin. I'm not saying that at all. I think you can go about wanting to improve your aesthetics and all of this in a way that still honors God. But I think we have to look beyond that, and it can't be in this self-seeking, drawing attention to ourselves kind of way. So with that being said, if you think about, first I want to bring up 1 Corinthians 10:31. It says, whether you eat or drink, whatever you do it all for the glory of God. And so really, I think that kind of wraps up what I just said with ignoring or idolizing our health and fitness pretty well. Of whatever we do it in a way that honors God. It should be through this lens of honoring Christ with everything that we do. And then from there, I want to talk about and ask you a question. If you were the enemy, what would you do to distract men from the calling that God has placed on their life and bring men away from God? And I think a lot of that would have to do with physical things. And I think a lot of it would have to do with things that may not be big, obvious, blatant things, but the little daily decisions that just push you 1 degree off to the side. But in 10 years, that's going to be miles and miles away from where you want to be. Think about a boat in the middle of the ocean. If they're 1 degree off after the hundreds and hundreds of miles that they're going to travel, they're going to miss their target by a long shot. So I think we have to think like that too, practically, as men who follow Christ, is if we are 1 degree off, if Satan just takes us 1 degree off and skews our thinking to where our body doesn't matter that much. We just need to worry about the spiritual side. We need to read our Bible. It doesn't matter what food we eat, right? Like it's just food. It doesn't matter. And then 10 years down the road, we're 50 pounds overweight. We have diabetes, and we can't take care of our kids. We can't be there for our grandchildren, and all these things. How do you think we are going to do the things that God has called us to do to our fullest potential if that's the case? Right? We're going to be so far off of our true calling and our fullest potential if we do that. And so I want to get practical with this too. And just as men, I'm sure you've heard this, but as men, we are protectors, providers. We need to be strong for our families. Just thinking in the practical sense, like God has made us as strong people for a reason. And so we don't need to just ignore that. We need to lean into that and say, all right, Lord, like, what is a biblical way to go about this? It's not to, be a slave driver or something like that, but it's to be better and to be a better servant of Christ with these gifts that God has given you as a man. And so really at the end of the day, if you're struggling physically, it's going to hold you back in every area of your life. Period. End of story. If you are struggling physically and ignoring your body physically, it's going to hold you back from the man that God has called you to be and from reaching your fullest potential. And I don't say that to be harsh or to be rude, but that is the truth that we have to think about. And within all this conversation, I'm not saying that you have to be shredded, have a six pack, be able to deadlift 600 pounds. That is not the story here that I'm saying either. The story is that as men who follow Christ, we need to steward and take responsibility for the body that he has given us. And then at the same time, we can't let it be an idol either, because that's going to lead down a whole nother road. And so anyway, with all that being said, that's what I'm here for with what I'm doing here with these videos on YouTube, here with my business, my coaching, all of the things, the free resources that I give you guys. That is what I'm here for, is to help men grow and get stronger spiritually, physically, and mentally, and help men ultimately at the end of the day be able to be and do all that God has called them to. So anyway, with all that being said, I have a free 7-day blueprint. I've got it in the chat here. I've got it down in the description if you're watching the replay. So be sure to check that out. It's got daily devotions for you. It's got workouts. It's got different resources in there to help you out wherever you're at, whether you're starting day one on your fitness and health journey and you want a good biblical foundation, or if you have a good start already and you just need some reminders and some accountability kind of built in that. And it also has a checklist and a lot of different things that are really going to be a resource, a good resource for you. So go get that. All you have to do is click on the link, enter your email, and then it's going to send it to you in an email. And if you don't get the email, be sure to check your spam folder and you should receive that. So if you guys want some free help, that is there. It is, like I said, such a great resource. If you don't have it, I don't know what you're doing. You need to go get it. But if you guys are looking for more help other than that, like I said, I do coaching. That is my business that I have. And again, this goes back to really God has put me in this position to be passionate about this. And I'm thankful for the gifts that he's given me and the mission that he's kind of put me on here with helping men be the man that God has called them to be. So again, with this, I've got a link, kind of the same thing as the 7-day blueprint. I've got a link in the description for one-on-one coaching application. So you can click on that, submit an application, and I'll reach out to you from there to see if you'd be a good fit, and we can go from there. So with that being said, the one-on-one coaching is really to build up the strategies, the plan, and the systems, ultimately to take the guesswork out of everything, to give you everything that you need so that you can take steps towards your goals and ultimately become that man that God is calling you to be. And it also gives you the accountability and the structure that you need in place there. And within all that, I've got a course within that. I've got an app that I use and so many great resources. So if you're at all interested in one-on-one coaching, click the link in the description below, fill out an application, and I will get with you soon. So I appreciate it, guys. Thank you for watching this video. Have a blessed day, and let's become the man that God is calling us to become. We'll see you guys in the next one.